Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Public Works and Urban Beautification Committee meeting for January the 11th, 2023. The order of business, we're going to first call the meeting to order. Is there any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none, I need an approval of our agenda. Someone to move that?
Actually, I wanted just to add something, if I could.
You want to add something under new business?
New business. Madam Chair, over the last couple of days, I've been meeting with some of our community partners, and one of the community partners wanted to get an update on our parking strategy working group that I think was put in place when Councillor MacLeod was here by the previous council. And if it's possible, the other issue is the report on the proposed Charlottetown House, Province House Historic District project. I believe the manager has been speaking to some groups about it, and just wanted to get an update on it because it is a significant project, including the Parking Strategy Working Group. They're very important.
Well, we'll see if the manager feels confident to respond to all those new businesses today, as the email that I put out last week would just remind us that I'm asking if we could have, anything a little bit ahead of time so that our staff is best prepared to come ready to speak to the issues we want to discuss.
Okay.
Just help with our meeting.
I'd like to amend my ask. So I'd like to give notice about those two issues.
Wonderful.
And I'd like to have them brought up at the next meeting.
Yep, perfect.
Standing committee meeting. And again, the one regarding the proposed Heritage District Development Strategic Plan, I think there was a proposed meeting for the 18th of this month. So this only came to me yesterday. That's why I'd like to keep that as part of a discussion item with Mr. Adams for this meeting. But as for the
Parking strategy, we can look at that
part
at the
of
next meeting.
as part of the
Okay.
Parking Strategy Working Group, I can give notice.
Sure. And maybe we can have a brief update then on the Province House
Yes.
project today, just as time sensitive. But moving forward, I do appreciate if we can get that information in as early as possible, just so that we keep these meetings running efficiently and on task, because that's my job, is to keep them on task. So thank you.
I have a request.
Yes, Councillor Twill.
I have a request for the next meeting. I'd like to review the criteria and the rating system and grading system for neighborhood streets being paved. I'd like to do a complete thorough analysis of that criteria and the efficiency and the effectiveness of how streets are rated, the methodology behind that rating system, and an evaluation as to how that's actually working.
Okay, what we'll do, maybe Councillor Twill, that is an operational thing that happens, is maybe we can ask for an update to come, whether it be through an email correspondence or whatever, and we can look at that future.
And just to follow up, Chair, and I would like to have the discussion here at the committee level.
If it's appropriate and it's not operational and we have something to do with it as far as our mandate, then absolutely we'll do that. Yep, thank you.
And Madam Chair, just one other item
Oh, my
I
goodness.
forgot from yesterday's meetings. No, there's a lot of interest in the city when you have your community groups that are passing on information through councillors or myself. It's just to, again, this is a notice for the next meeting there, Madam Chair. It's to look at the timelines of what happened with the Queen Street lighting project that was being sponsored by the Downtown Charlottetown, Inc. Thank you.
Thank you. Wallace, I'm sure you're able to capture all that for our next agenda. Perfect. And anything further, please make sure you feel free to email that in, and we can make sure that it's all added.
No, that's
So-
why I gave you notice here at the public
And
meeting.
that's, nope, that's perfect. Thank you. So can I have an approval of our agenda, please? So moved, seconded by the mayor. Everybody's in favor of that. Adoption of our minutes from the Public Works and Urban Beautification Committee last dated October 26th, 2022. I need someone to move those. Thank you, Councillor McAleer. And your worship? Seconded, okay. No issues. Any business arising from those previous minutes? I'm not seeing any, so it'll allow us to move right into reports. And I'd like to welcome Joey McKinnon, who's the assistant manager, and Scott Adams, the manager. And they will do their best to provide us with lots of great information today. Yes, Councillor Twill.
My apologies. For the next meeting, I forgot to mention, I want a complete, total, comprehensive review of Christmas lights and how they're distributed throughout this city.
Well, these comprehensive reviews, we might need to hire some new staff to come in and do that, but we will do our best to get you a great update, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. We are going to first start with Section A, which is going to be our terms of reference for this committee to make sure that we're all on the same page. They're very clearly outlined here. I'm sure you've read them, as Wallace did a great job to get the package out to us in advance. Is there any questions or concerns or clarifications that we need to discuss?
I have a question.
Okay. Okay. Before we do, just before I get to you, Councillor Twill, I know we talked about the net zero goal being added to every terms of reference. I'm not seeing that there. Through the strategic priorities would be a goal to be close to net zero, and I think we can get the proper wording from His Worship because...
Yes, or Madam Chair, it would be Donna Waddell, our CAO, the acting CAO, Sue Fraser.
Okay.
So yeah, one or the other will get it to Wallace.
And I also believe one other piece that was crossed the board was the reconciliation one. So we need to add those two to our committee reference. Okay,
Madam Chair, that's already there. It's the second last one, to advise and make recommendations on policies, programs, and strategies aimed
I'm sorry, I see it there.
advancing
Okay. Yeah.
reconciliation efforts.
Perfect. Okay, Councillor Twill, you had another point?
Yes. The bullet where it says to advise and make recommendations on fleet acquisition and maintenance. Can somebody please elaborate as to how that functions and how that actually works in the Public Works Department?
I guess, Councillor Twill, do you have a specific, or I guess, or what are you looking for in terms of responses?
I'm looking for the functionality, how it rolls out, how does it actually work? Like, I'll be honest with you, I'm not. I think I have an idea, but I don't know how it actually. Well, I don't know how it actually works, and I'm trying to get a better understanding. And are you looking to make enhancements and improvements?
Right. So in the Public Works Department, we have a fleet division, I guess, or a fleet area. One superintendent is in charge of, would be the superintendent who falls under Mr. McKinnon, would be the day-to-day operations in charge of fleet and the mechanics. So we have a team of 3 mechanics who are responsible for the repair and maintenance of most of our vehicles. Anything that's a significant repair outside of our typical capabilities, we send that out to be repaired. We maintain well over 100 pieces of equipment. I'm not sure the exact number at this moment, but it's a significant amount of equipment. We have everything from SUVs to half tons to 1 tons, dump trucks, plow trucks, and loaders. That's pretty much, day-to-day operations. The goal is keep the vehicles running, and then we look at some of the other things we're always looking at is how can we, make sure we're reducing our budgets and reducing the repairs, and that's part of the replacement plan we look forward to. Every year we replace so many vehicles to ensure our fleet keeps operating as efficiently as it can.
In your assessment, Scott, how do you think it's working?
It's been working quite well. There's always room for improvement. And I think one thing, not just in our department, but everything should be centralized across the city. It should be under one fleet area so that all vehicles are being maintained to the same standards. Right now, every department kind of does their own thing. We're the only department that has a fleet of mechanics that does a lot of in-house repairs. And like I say, other departments, they look after their own repairs at outside shops.
Sorry, so you're looking to centralize them?
We believe that would likely be the best option for the city. We've looked at some numbers in the past few years, and there looks like there are a number of savings to centralize. And it doesn't make sense for a number of different departments, especially some of the smaller ones that don't have as many vehicles in their fleet, to be managing them. It makes more sense that one area will manage all the fleet for the entire city.
And as far as our role as a committee, the policies and procedures surrounding that, if there's recommendations that would come from you, how we could best support that, that would be our role as a committee on the policies and procedures. So thank you for that. Are there any other concerns or questions that we need to look at in our terms of reference?
Madam Chair, just to follow up on that, this is like Back to the Future, Scott. I was in council in 2000, 2003. George Traynor, who was the chair of Public Works, actually, I think he brought Wallace into the fold with us when he was involved in council. And his purpose was to look at fleet management, and that's why I think we hired someone by the name of Jim Mulno to take on that task. And it was to oversee fleet management for the whole, not just Public Works, but all departments. And I think that was going forward, but it looks like it went off track again. And can we not go to past practices or maybe sewer? And you know what? Donna could be of help there, because this is, again, it's like the hamster wheel. It keeps going around and around.
Thank you. So there are acting interim CAO.
It's quite a handle. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to add to the conversation only simply because, Councillor, to your point about fleet management and to your point, Your Worship, there are some past practices that were effective, and the governance report will deal with that, because we are looking at the buckets of how we deliver our service, and fleet and transportation. Those are all integral parts that are a little bit spotty right now, as far as, not spotty, that's not a good word, but we're not consolidating the assets and streamlining how we roll that out. Fleet management is one of those. So the governance report will capture that.
Perfect. Thank you.
One other, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Twill.
Thank you for that clarification, Sue. To advise and make recommendations, and I brought this up at the council meeting the other night under finance, to advise and make recommendations on procurement. So having said that, when our chair of finance, when it happens with a new bylaw on procurement, will this come under that? So, I don't want to overuse the phrase, but it's more open and transparent, and truly, businesses, particularly here in the island, will have an opportunity to submit a bid, a bid where they're able to compete and compete fairly, and there is the rating systems and all that mechanism will be in place. One thing over the last 4 years, I think we fell short. It's not a criticism, but I think the whole procurement equation and how that rolls out, and how businesses can have the opportunity to effectively compete, and they know that they're going to be given that opportunity, and there's not going to be one-offs, or this is an anomaly, or whatever the case may be. I'm just looking for consistency and predictability.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, it's the third bullet from the bottom, to advise and make recommendations in procurement. So when Scott and his department wish to purchase equipment or materials, they have to go through a procurement process which is governed by the policy. When the bylaw comes in, this will remain there, because Scott and the department will continue to purchase materials and supplies and equipment. So that's why it's in there. You may not see advise and make recommendations on procurement with strategic priorities, because we're not into the snow removal or building streets. So that's why it's there, and you'll see it in different departments, because it gives that authority. That's the purpose of it.
I understand that, Your Worship, but the point I'm trying to make is that I think with the bylaw, and again, I'm going to reiterate what I said, there's going to be more clarity, there's going to be more predictability, more consistency, and like, again, I go back to our island businesses. I mean, you keep hearing it, shop local and promote local, and this will give them an opportunity to effectively submit a competitive bid. That's why I reference that. I'm very interested in our whole procurement procedure and process and how it unfolds.
And the nice thing is we have the Chair of Finance on this committee, and he's going to take that back because Chair of Finance will be responsible for the procurement bylaw that we are going to be in the process of developing. Therefore, we will make sure that we take those points, which I think are very important, into play. Underneath the terms of reference, we also see included in your package all the bylaws that we are responsible for as a committee. So thank you, Wallace, for incorporating that. I would recommend taking some time before our next committee just to review those and have a look and become familiar with them so that we stay in our lane when we're working through those things. So,
Excuse me, Madam Chair, just under the response for the following. I know at the other night's monthly meeting, Scott, we talked about coordination for signage among different departments. I believe Public Works and Beautification really look at the installation of signage. That's why you're part of the three-tier or three-party coordination. So it's not about decision-making. I think the decision-making comes through communication, strategic priorities, and intergovernment cooperation. And then if economic development is looking at something to promote a new event or reoccurring events, they have a responsibility. But I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Chair, I'm just going through if you don't mind, the manager, his or the department's responsibility is just the installation and maintenance of those signs. Is that correct?
I believe you're referring to like signs like the Christmas or any of the ad signs that you see in North River Road and those. That's correct. We don't determine what goes on those signs. Those are all at economic development, and we just help them install those 5 locations, I believe.
Under the Old Protestant Burial Grounds Committee, I know there's been some changes in the maintenance and personnel that have been involved in, grass cutting and doing some landscaping at the Old Protestant Burial Grounds. That's a very historic cemetery, probably the most historic in this province, I would argue. Besides the committee, is there anything new or anything innovative that's going to be taking place with respect to that historic site?
At this time, it's business as usual. We've typically dedicated a seasonal employee to help maintain the lawn and clean up the site during the summer months. Just lawn maintenance, and then they also provide some. They have some historical knowledge about the burial grounds, and folks that pop in, they take them on a bit of tour and such. But other than that, we just do the basic landscaping needs throughout the summer months. Anything else major would be at the discretion at the Old Protestant Burial Grounds Committee.
Okay, I'll pursue that later.
okay, thank you. So again, we've kind of did a scan of the bylaws we are responsible for, which was subsection B, and we can always add if you have questions or concerns pertaining to that. Do you have
I
something
just
you'd like
noticed
to
an
add?
error.
Oh, yes,
The
sorry.
traffic bylaw, for some reason, I forgot to add it to the list of responsibilities, and that is now Public Works. It's been there for about a year now. So we'll make that adjustment and then send it back to, I believe Tracy looks after all this.
Just on that point, Scott, did we not get an email here about, say, 2 weeks ago, something to do with traffic, that it went back to Protective Services Committee? Was there an email or something that was no, not sent back to
Nope,
police?
nope.
Nothing to do with traffic?
Nothing with the traffic bylaw by any means, no.
So that's all administered under Public Works?
That is correct.
And Madam
please
Chair,
tell
We
me
work
what
very, very closely with the police department on, because there's parking enforcement, things like that that fall under it, that they manage that aspect of it, but the overall traffic bylaw is managed by Public Works, as a lot of it has to deal with signage, traffic control, things like that, which is what, myself and another engineer, we look after, from an engineering standpoint, look after those aspects of the roads.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Does that also include speed? For example, whether it's 30 kilometers or 40 kilometers in school zones or near playgrounds, where sometimes you'll see signage at 25 and sometimes, and I brought this up to council on a couple of occasions where I see inequities or an off balance of speeding. For example, I'll use Spring Park Road, for example. We have an elementary school, St. Jean's Elementary School, and then it turns back to the regular speed, 40 kilometers. Then you hit Colonel Gray, and we'll discuss it later. But I think there needs to be consistency there, well, because it's too chaotic there now. And I can tell you, speeding on Spring Park Road is a major, major concern for the folks that live in that community that funnel into Spring Park Road, particularly the intersection of McGill, Spring Park Road, the west side of McGill, and east side.
Hey, Councillor Twill, Madam Chair, the traffic bylaw is part of our package. I just think it was skipped in the reference. Did you notice that, Scott?
Correct.
It's in the package.
Correct,
But
yeah.
Again,
Didn't get mentioned.
when we discuss these bylaws, if we're going into specific streets, as a candidate for mayor, I could refer to Angus Drive, I could refer to Scott Street, Parkside Drive. Like, I know what some of us are trying to point out here, but I think what you're asking us to do, Madam Chair, is to go home and read these bylaws, right? So that we know what we're responsible for. And if not, then I think the manager or the deputy manager can say, well, if you refer to the traffic bylaw section 4, subsection 4.1A, there's your answer. It's just to cut down on what we're trying to get to. And I think, Wallace, were you responsible for putting this package together? Well done.
And I also think, Councillor Twill, that part of our job, if we have concerns with what the existing bylaws are, that we can, again, email that in. And if you have specific concerns, we can deal with that coming forward, and not specific streets operationally per se, but in a fact where you would say there's this inconsistency on streets around speed, and then the manager would be able to come back and provide us with correct information, or we could adapt our.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, but I think sometimes you have to get down to specifics. I really do. So we can discuss that at future meetings, but I just wanted to bring that to the committee's attention.
Right, and I do agree with the mayor that I think we have issues, we know that, across the city as far as speeding and traffic, and we are going to make sure that we have signage and proper signage in place, and then we hope that the police either catch the people that aren't following this proper signage and rules, or we'll move from there, but we're doing our best.
The speeding and the traffic thing is, I think, is across the city. It's just, anyway, it's, I know it is in our neighborhood.
Yeah. Human behavior, we're on a new way where everybody's in a rush. Unfortunately, something bad's going to happen if people don't follow the rules that are in place. Okay, so we can, by all means, come back and look at our bylaws if there's questions or concerns. Scott, do you have anything to add under those two sections, or Joey, at this point? Are we good to move to section C?
Everything's pretty straightforward.
Is there one bylaw that we have to repeal and replace
So
that you
would
want to
be in-
speak to?
That's report number 2. Yeah.
Or bylaw overview?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on to that. I took bylaw overview as the overview of the bylaws.
No problem.
Okay, I'm going to let you move on and speak to that now.
Certainly, thank you. So street access bylaw, been around since about 2008, and what it does is governs how private properties access the public right-of-way. The previous bylaw was not very strong in how we administered that, how we determined the appropriate dimensions of the right of way or of the driveway, where they can place the driveway, and things like that. And it had caused the city some issues in recent years on some appeals that have gone to IRAC because of the lack of clarity or lack of definition. There's been some confusion and has made it quite hard for the city to defend their position on some of the decisions that have been made. So after advisement from our legal counsel, we have worked with planning and police to rewrite the street access bylaw, which you have in your package now. This was reviewed by the previous committee back in March, but at that point in time, it got missed to get to council, so we're back here now to just advise this committee on the changes and to take it back to council for review and hopefully first and second reading. And I'll go over a few of the major changes, but there's kind of five big changes. Like I said, we rewrote the whole thing. So the first one is there is now an actual formal process for an individual to apply for a driveway, whether it's a modification to an existing driveway or a new driveway. And we have to sign off on it and review it and sign off on it. The new bylaw provides more details on what will and what will not be approved. Before, that was not as clear in that. And it also states that we can require a traffic study if we feel that, this is more so for the commercial side of things, that if we feel we need to better understand what type of traffic they will be generating in an area of the city. Number three, we define the driveway width over the public right-of-way. And so essentially, by controlling the width of the driveway, what we do a number of things in that regard. One, we don't get driveways that are 10 meters wide, and you'll see some out there. That does a couple things. One, it reduces the number of green space and tree spaces that we can have. It's impactful to our environment. And two, then you get multiple entry and exit points from a property onto the roadway. It is not ideal for a number of vehicles to be able to back into the street in and out of the public right-of-way. Number three, just another section that they're required to schedule a pre and post inspection with us to make sure that the work is being done in the right location, and then at the end of the day, we inspect to make sure it's done properly in accordance with their plan that they submitted. And then the last one is just the outline of responsibilities of the applicant. They're responsible for installing the driveway and making any modifications to city infrastructure that we deem necessary as a result of the new driveway.
Thank you. So do we need to move here to recommend to repeal and replace from this committee to move that recommendation to council? So again, I think the highlights were certainly clear, and we haven't given people, unless they read their package in detail beforehand. Do we feel comfortable moving that now to council for a repeal and replace, or do you want to wait, until we have a chance to go through our bylaws?
Madam Chair, can I just ask a question to the manager? Is that all right?
Yes?
So when the province of Prince Edward Island, if I build a home out on Highway 2, Scott, and I need a new driveway, does the province pay for the installation of the culvert and work that brings that driveway into my home?
I'm not sure what the province does in terms of that. I couldn't answer that question. But why we require it here is because there's a number of different driveway, you have some areas of the city that do not have, that are already infilled, or there's the stormwater system designed differently, there's curb and gutter. And so every driveway is going to be slightly different. So we leave it up to the developer to install that, because each driveway can be more expensive, just depending if you're dealing with concrete or whatever. So that's why we leave it up to the developer to pay for those costs instead of the city.
Mr. Adams, I think that's why the province is responsible for the culvert and the driveway, because they want to ensure consistency from East Point to West Point, North Shore to South Shore. So do we have to amend this or withdraw this street access bylaw right away, Madam Chair?
No, I don't think, I think, like I said, we can give committee members an opportunity to read this and add it to our next agenda so that they're comfortable, and maybe look at further discussion around what your issue was there. I know we talked about some different things, even from planning on developers having to pay the city to do the work. I don't know if that's something we could look at moving forward so that the consistency of making sure the work's done properly or whatever. But anyway, you guys can do what, do we all feel in agreement to take this bylaw home, look at it a little more
I'm
clearly?
in favor of that.
You're in favor of that?
In favor of what? Oh, yeah.
Of deferring it
Yeah.
till our next meeting and giving everybody a chance to just go through it and have a real good read? Councillor Twill?
But Madam Chair, again, with the manager here, Mr. Adams, could we find out if the province is actually doing that as part of their service to ensure consistency again from East Point to West Point, North Shore to South Shore, so that if we allow the developer to do the installation, then to ensure consistency, we would have to have inspection services that will go out and ensure that it's a 450 millimeter corrugated steel pipe or corrugated plastic pipe, that it has flared ends and so forth, because down the road there is a possibility that the developer may want to ditch infill his or her subdivision or his or her property around their home. So again, it's all about consistency. So could we just get that asked? I think you can go through either. It's not Darren Chason. It could be
Even short. Yeah,
Stephen who?
short.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
But just on that, and we will confirm what the province does for consistency, but in the bylaw, there's inspection process. So that's why there's parameters around the developer has to notify the city when they're planning to do the work. So we do a pre-inspection and we do a post-inspection to make sure it's done in accordance to the plan, which is pre-approved. And that's where we get the consistency. Beyond that, the resources that it would take to install the number of driveways that we see in a run of a year would be just significant. It would be just cost prohibitive for us to do. It take a lot of resources to do that.
Again, this is just purely for clarification. So you're telling me that all these new subdivisions like Hidden Valley, or the new subdivisions out in East Royalty off, I think it's the McWilliams Roundabout, they all require culverts onto McWilliams Road that we pay for presently, or is it paid by the developer?
So ever since I've been here, it's always been by the developer. Whoever's building the lot or who's ever requesting the new driveway puts in the culvert and builds the driveway. And we've always followed a bit of a process. We do have a policy in Public Works, but this is to formalize it and to put it into a bylaw. It's again to help the city better defend themselves at Iraq and defend their decision making, whether for whatever reason. And that's why we're here to make those changes. We've always been doing it this way. It's just formalizing in the bylaw to strengthen our position.
And Madam Chair, last question. So developers have been doing it ever since you came here, and we've not inspected any of them?
So since I've been here, we do try to inspect a lot of the ones in ditches. We do try to keep those, keep an eye on those ones. When you look at like Montgomery Heights, there are no ditches, right? We inspected the roadway when we accepted the road, right? All those roads have been built in the past 2 or 3 years. So we have myself or another engineer. We go out and inspect those roads before we accept them as part of our development process or road acceptance process at the city. And so we know right then and there when someone comes for a driveway application, that really all they have to do is just butt it up against the back of the curb. And so the only thing we're concerned at that point in time then is the width that they're putting it in. As long as they put it in according to their submitted design, everything's good to go. So it's a 5-second inspection for those ones, or can be.
Thank you. What happens if people don't follow the rules and don't do it properly?
So they're mostly we approach them and they have to repair it one way or another. Yeah.
Okay, I was just wondering. Okay, so I think we are all in agreement. If you're, is this time pressing, Scott? Are we good to add this to the agenda for our next meeting and just be able to allow people that opportunity to read through it?
I think it's fine because there's not many, development is not really happening. No driveways are going in right now. So I think we'll be fine to bring it sometime back in February and then get it hopefully approved by the end of March would be ideal.
Perfect. So we have that added to our agenda next month as well. Great. Thank you for the bylaw overview. Now we're on to C, the winter operations overview.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what we wanted to kind of do is just, again, with this meeting, give an overview to the committee as everyone is fairly new to both the city and to the committee. So we just kind of want to, especially since we're in winter operations, let's give a bit of an overview of what we do and how we do things in the city of Charlottetown. Our city staff, so our own employees are responsible for about 90 kilometers of roadway plowing or winter maintenance and 155 kilometers of sidewalks and multi-use pathways and 12 municipal buildings. So Public Works Department and we also have 3 winter service contracts for snow clearing. One is the kind of East Royalty Sherwood area, which is done by Chapman Brothers Limited. West Royalty Lewis Point Park area, which is Matheson Construction. And then just recently, the Priority Route was done up to last year by the province. We have now since entered into a new contract with Chapman Brothers for that one. And these contracts account for approximately 165 kilometers of roadway of winter services. So on the city side of things, myself and assistant manager, and then we oversee a team of 5 superintendents, and then there are approximately 44 staff, both staff who are permanent and seasonal. We currently have 3 vacancies in that, but who are plow truck drivers, loader operators, sidewalk plow operators, and municipal building staff. And then we have a number of pieces of equipment to handle our winters here. We have 6 loaders equipped with snow plows. We have 4 loaders, 4 loader mounted snow blowers, 7 plow trucks that also salt and sand, 3 dump trucks. We have 14 sidewalk plows that also salt and sand. 4 walk-behind snow blowers that we use for municipal buildings, and then new for this year that hopefully we'll be getting off the ground sometime near future is a direct liquid application truck.
Thank you for that report. Yes, Councillor Twill, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Scott, in terms of everything you just outlined, from the union's perspective and our own machinery, what are we missing? Can you give me a thumbnail sketch in terms of where we're lacking in terms of machinery, and from an ideal perspective, if, money wasn't the issue or it's not an obstacle, or maybe it is a necessity. What are we currently missing now in terms of machinery to effectively look after what, say, QP 501 is responsible for?
Maybe I'll let Joey respond to this one. I think we're in machinery-wise, we're in really, for the most part, great shape. But I'll let you respond, Joey.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. We've, in the past number of years, have added a lot of new equipment. We've gotten ourselves up to a state right now where we can maintain what we have. It's as we add more paved pathways, more sidewalks and things like that, we have to keep, if we add infrastructure, we're going to have to add equipment as well as employees to look after the equipment. But as of right now, we've been playing catch up, but the last, I'm going to say 5 years, we've made significant gains to get us to a spot where we're very comfortable right now. I mean, we always have, we have equipment that is coming to its life cycle. I think at one point in time, we kind of tried to stretch that cycle a little bit too far, which incurs a lot of downtime, a lot of costs and things like that. And we've managed now to shorten our life cycle and take better care of our equipment. So we're in a really good spot right now.
Okay, so there's no disparities, there's no discrepancies, and no deficiencies.
I mean, we can always use more equipment, new equipment. You know, it's nice and when it comes in shiny and new and it has a warranty. But like I said, I think if we were to incur some major snowfalls right now, we have all the equipment that we need to keep everything rolling.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And just one thing to add to, and Joey will also agree, even if it's a brand new piece of equipment and you know, you can go out tomorrow, run it for an hour and something breaks, especially hydraulic hoses. Those are something that breaks quite easily, especially at the beginning of the year. They dry out over the summer months and they will break quite early. So some things like that do happen. And I know some folks around here will hear that, oh, our equipment's always breaking. Well, it's kind of the nature of the beast too. Sometimes it doesn't matter the age. It just, parts will wear out, especially this snow's hard on equipment like this. It's really hard on it. We expect breakdowns and they do happen, but again, the age of our fleet is in really great shape.
Yeah, just to add to that, one of our biggest battles we fight is salt. And in the last number of years, we've changed our policy. At the end of the year, everything is completely cleaned and anti-salted, and it's made great strides in keeping our equipment in an operational manner. As you know, with salt, it finds its way into little nooks and crannies. And do we have some issues with it? Yes, but as far or compared to where we were 3 years ago, we made significant gains there. And just one thing I'd like to reiterate on what Scott mentioned about our paved pathways and sidewalks. When it comes to our pathways, we may have, we'll say, 9 kilometers of pathways, but you can double it because the width of them, it's taken 2 and 3 passes for us to get through them. It's not as quick as we went into a sidewalk and we did a neighborhood. If you have 10 kilometers of pathways, well, you really have 20, maybe a bit more, because we have to go over them so many times with the size of our equipment to get it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Go ahead, Councillor Twill.
I recall a few years ago when we were purchasing these new sidewalk plows that I think there was a commitment made to have the blades adjustable. For example, I think the norm is 5 feet. And then in the older part of the city, we have sidewalks that are, let's say, 3 feet. I stand to be corrected, but they're 3 feet in width. And then what happens is our lawns get torn up and the residents get frustrated. Is the department able to make those adjustments so in old parts of the city where the sidewalks are only, like, let's say, 3.5 feet in width, are you able to make those adjustments to the sidewalk plows so that lawns are not being torn up every year? It seems to be something that keeps reoccurring time and time again. And it's no one's fault, but there is frustration from some of our constituents. You know, they get their lawns all repaired and we're into the fall and everything looks good, and then we're back to the same old cycle. Is there anything we can do to avoid that?
Well, Councillor, the deciding factor is actually the width of the machinery. You have to plow a path with the machinery, and that's what the blades are set up for. When they're angled, they're about the same, a little bit wider than the machinery, I would say. But that's really the deciding factor. Those machines, those 3-foot sidewalks, our machines don't even fit on. We're straddling the roadway or the grass. It's really the best proactive approach is as we go and replace sidewalks in these smaller areas, we're looking at how can we widen those sidewalks. We've started doing that over the past couple of years, and we will continue to do that if we can make it happen. The other spots, if a sidewalk machine can't get through, we have a list of areas around the city that our municipal buildings crew will come in behind our sidewalk crews and clear a path with the walk behind snow blower. That way we try to minimize the damage to some of the lawns in these really, really tight areas.
Just to follow up, Scott, I do know for a fact that some of the sidewalks that were sidewalk replacements, you know, it was the same standard, say 3.5. It wasn't the ideal 5 feet. So, you know, I'm with you there, but we are still pouring sidewalks, you know, the same width, and I don't know what we're going to do to make inroads there, but if we're going 5 feet in width, then that is the standard, then we should be adhering to that.
And again, we've really only started taking a good look at this past couple of years, and maybe some areas you might be seeing, we're only repairing a section of the road. Like, you know, it would, if we're only replacing maybe 10, 20 meters at a time, we wouldn't go and replace only 10 meters of the sidewalk as a 1.5 meter wide sidewalk where the rest of it isn't, where the rest is only 1 meter. You can only truly do it when you replace the entire block from intersection to intersection is the only time that you can really widen it, because it would be a bit of a hazard, and it just wouldn't look good either at the end of the day, but it's mostly a hazard to have a sidewalk jet in and out like that.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Your Worship.
thank you for the opportunity to ask questions on the reports. I appreciate your patience and your due diligence. It's just the numbers, Madam Chair. It's like I like to drill down on some of the numbers. So if the answers are not possible, you can follow up at the next meeting. So I'm not looking for hard, fast answers at this point. But it says we have the manager and assistant manager who oversee five superintendents. So that new superintendent that we hired because we didn't go with the foreman and we went with the superintendent, that would, I'm assuming, would be part of that 5. And do we have a superintendent for winter works that we bring in to oversee some of our 255 kilometers of roadway, 155 kilometers of sidewalks? And if I could ask, we have 44 staff, permanent, and seasonal staff. If we could just get a breakdown on what the permanent is and what the seasonal is again, I think these numbers just reflect the work that's involved in clearing streets, sidewalks, multi-use paved pathways, active transportation pathways. It's a lot of work. And is the province still supplying us with salt, sand, and brine? And I don't know if I know there was in the past, and I know Councillor Tweel would remember that we did make an arrangement with the province on CUSA, Canadian Charlottetown Urban Services Agreement, that we would take salt, sand in lieu of cash, and then brine was just added, I think, in the last 5-7 years. I don't know if you have all those questions down, Mr. Adams, but if you can't answer them now, just like to have a follow-up and
I
get some answers.
I can answer a few of those now. So the 5 superintendents does include the one that comes in seasonally, because one of our superintendents that's a permanent staff is not actually in our winter rotation, what we call it. So these 5 superintendents, they're in a shift work, 12-hour shifts, and they rotate throughout the winter months on that shift. So the one other superintendent, because buildings and fleets are more typically an 8 to 4:30 operation, we needed to have a superintendent available during those hours to make sure those operations still continue. And you're correct, as we do hire the additional superintendent, which we hope is sooner rather than later, that would increase that number up by 1 for the winter operations. I will have to get you a breakdown of the 44 staff. I do not have that currently with me. And then last, in terms of the supply materials from the province, correct. The province does supply us with salt and brine. Their sand, we were getting sand from them in previous years. But one of the sand products that they used to import, they no longer bring in. The only sand they have is it's a locally sourced sand, and it's very fine. It doesn't work for our needs, we find. We were using about a 50-50 mix on our sidewalks, depending at the time of year and how cold it was. But this fine sand doesn't really give the traction that we were looking for. So we do not use that product anymore. In terms of cost, I believe we still pay invoices yearly for the salt and brine use. So I am not sure about that deal. That would have been a long time ago. But as far as I can remember, I can recall signing off on invoices for the purchase of salt and sand, or salt and brine.
And Madam Chair, just a supplementary question on that. I know that we do have a monitoring system for our salt and brine. It's through, I can't remember the name of the company, but it's from Ontario. But there are areas, Mr. Adams and Mr. McKinnon, where there are large amounts of salt that are dumped on parts of streets, roads, and so forth. But again, that's not a big issue. For me, it's just that I think that more sand could be used. It would be better for the environment, because I'm sure you've heard the argument that in the spring all this salt goes into our systems and goes out into the harbor. So I'm just trying to look at the longer term. And if you could also keep in mind that we have the arterial highway active transportation pathway and the extension on McCrae Drive up to Royalty Road, is it? East Royalty Road. I think those are important areas that have to be cleared, and I don't know if they've been cleared in the past. I know that I did receive calls that they were not cleared during the winter, but they are actively used by the residents out in East Royalty, Hillsborough Park, and surrounding areas. So just keep those in mind. And other than that, I think it's Madam Chair, the way it's laid out, it's well planned. Looks like we're very ready, set to go if there's any major storm to take on, and all the best of luck.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Scott and Joey, for updating us on that, and we can come back to those other questions, either through an email or we can bring them up at our next committee for that. So Walls also provided us with an updated sheet, hard copy, of projects from last year and kind of where they're at and to be complete. We will be moving into our capital budget discussion. Is it this week or next week? I can't even remember. 25th, yeah.
25th,
So
yeah.
this is just more for information sharing purposes. I don't think we're going to have to get into specifics unless you have a question on something. But it's more to be able, I think, I've been told we'll be updated regularly each month on these projects and where we're at. So it's a good
correct.
baseline, and it's a good communication tool. And I think we do include this in our council package for everybody to have the opportunity to see.
That's correct, yeah. So
Okay.
it's something we've developed this past year. It has saved a lot of questions. It provides as much information that so far we see that council is looking for to help answer any questions. Feel free to have a look at it. If there's any particular information you're looking for in regards to a project, we can manipulate it and add another column or delete a column, however you folks see fit. But this is kind of where we started last year, and it has worked. We'll obviously make some tweaks, but this will be the final report for this year, as everything's pretty much shut down for the winter until we begin again the construction season. Probably sometime May or June will be the next big update.
That's great, Scott. Councillor Twill, I see you have a question.
Yeah. Is it this committee's responsibility, or is it Parks and Rec, when it comes to, say, the construction of a new community facility for community usage, whether it be for seniors, young people, could be children's programming, whatever. Does that fall under this, or does it fall under Parks and Rec?
Those buildings are managed and maintained by Public Works, so a new facility would come through the Public Works department. Parks and Recs, their involvement, they look after the scheduling of events in those facilities only.
Okay, let me be a little more specific. So we're going to be constructing a community facility like you'd see out in Malcolm Dara, West Royalty Community Center, or out Hillsborough Community Center. So to construct a facility of that nature and to ensure that all the amenities are there, that still would be funneled through this committee and this department.
That's correct. We would obviously work with Parks and Rec as they would work with the user groups. They know what the user groups are looking for in these areas. Just like any project, it's a cross-departmental planning part. Doesn't matter what project on this list. I've sat down with the various departments on that, whether it's water and sewer or Parks and Rec, environment sustainability, advise them what's going on, let them have a look at the drawings and plans and provide feedback accordingly. So yes, it is. We are the lead on it, but our partners in other departments would be able to provide feedback, and that's what we want. We want to build a facility that meets the needs of the community, and we rely on our partners to help us determine what that is.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Just a question on Short Street Extension. I see it's down for $170,000. Did the city of Charlottetown pay for that?
The Short Street extension, yes, that was a cost to the city for that.
There was
project.
no contribution from the provincial government?
The contribution from the provincial government was they negotiated to hold the previous year construction prices for us. And so we built this in 2020. There was a significant jump, almost about 25%. We were seeing a lot of projects or more in some projects. So by them negotiating with the contractor to hold their previous year prices, we were able to save a significant amount of money as a result of that.
But they didn't put any money into the Short Street
That's
extension.
correct. They did not give us any money for the actual construction, no.
No further questions?
Madam Chair, just on that, Short Street is a municipal street.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Adams, I just wanted to clarify a couple of issues here. If I look at, where is it? Hurley Street, cost shared with water and wastewater. So estimated cost was 1 million. It came in at 1.4, 1.5. Is that both Public Works and water and wastewater?
I believe that was both of them, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if I look up at Pond Street, I don't see any estimated cost. So we just went and paid 1.7 million? Because I think these are both in Ward 4.
So the 1.7 was also there was a portion that was water and sewer and a portion that was city. So I noticed we should have included that in the project name, and so, but yes, it was a cost shared project between the two. departments.
And do you have could you provide at the next meeting, or just send it an email, the estimated cost?
Yep,
there?
we can see what we have for information from that. Yep.
Okay, and just one other matter. On the Eastern Gateway, page 2, you have it estimated at 2 million, but if you look at the signage down at, well, I guess it's just on Grafton Street East, near the Charlottetown Event Grounds. The signage says almost 4 million because there's stormwater management and is that also including Beach Street and Park Street?
So the reason why it's only 2 million here, that's all we had budgeted for in the capital budget. So that's actually not the incorrect place, and I never noticed that before. We're still trying to finalize the overall scope or price for that, because we are into the detailed design now for that project. We had hoped to be able to do some work this past summer in that area, but unfortunately, just due to delays in, we're influenced heavily by the province and what they're doing at the Grafton Street, Riverside Drive, Hillsborough Bridge intersection. We had to wait until they, at a minimum, had their footprint designed, and we have just recently received that. So we couldn't really make any progress until that was. So the 2 million was just for the capital budget that we were earmarking to do some work last year. That will all likely roll over, and we'll have the actual estimate here in the next probably couple months.
And Madam Chair, I know I'm belaboring some of these issues, but on this matter of Grafton Street East and Riverside Drive intersection, the initial plan was to go with a roundabout. I think that might have been changed. And I know, Madam Chair, speaking to Mr. Adams, that Grafton's Water Street Parkway will be shut down from that intersection to almost to the entrance into the Charlottetown Event Grounds, where we'll link up to I don't know if it'll be a roundabout or a signalized intersection that will take traffic either going east or west. But, Mr. Adams, I'm glad that you brought this forward, because Charlottetown Harbor Authority, they run a lot of gravel out of their marshalling yard, from there out to Steve Matheson on construction, the provincial government's supply. They're concerned that this will disrupt, and I know, I'm sure you do have answers, but could you or Mr. McKinnon reach out to Mike Cochran to just, bring them into the fold to say, here's the proposal? Because if we do go with a roundabout or a signalized intersection at the Charlottetown Event Grounds and Grafton Street East, they have to turn right or turn east onto Grafton Street East, get to the intersection of Grafton Street East and Riverside Drive, make another left. So, right now, it's just a slip drive that takes them right on to Riverside Drive from the Marshall Yard at the transit shed or the Charlottetown Wharf. So if you could just follow up on that. And last but not least, I look at the Beech Grove Road culvert. Again, I know, Mr. Adams, I sent you text messages, phoned you during Christmas. Didn't bother Wallace. No, didn't bother Wallace. Didn't bother Joey. Just always kept texting you. It's finally done. I know it looks great. I believe the water flow will go much better. Or it'll be a much better hydraulics for both sides of Allen's Creek. But you come in at 3.5 was the estimated cost, and it came in at 3.3. Were there any late costs incurred because of the length of the contract and what was laid out in the contract? And the reason I ask you, Mr. Adams, our business has been caught into being late for contracts, and there are always penalties. So I don't know if that was part of the contract. But kudos in getting it done. Looks great.
So I can't comment to full details on it, as we're still working through all the details. Truly, the only overages that we've seen so far are there are some areas where we had to over excavate just because of soil conditions, which is always expected with this type of project. You never know what you're going to find as soon as you start excavating. Other than that, though, the scheduling, everything that they had to do temporarily to get us through the winter months, that is on the contractor. So all the barriers and all that temporary, that is all on them. They are responsible for that, and then we'll return in the spring to finalize the contract. So with any of the delays, they're at this time, I have no overages to report.
And Madam Chair, can I just say that I know you don't live in that area, but you have to even just go out and drive near the site, the flow of traffic, the both neighborhoods, Lewis Point, Park, and Orchard Hill. The councillor from the areas is the chair of finance. It's working very well. Just one last comment. If we're talking about wish lists, I know at our last meeting of Public Works, the councillor from Ward 3, the former councillor Ward 3, talked about a light going on a street lamp going up at the intersection up Fitzroy Street and Terry Fox Drive. Could you please, Mr. Adams, include your plans from last year's budget? I know it was dropped, to extend the heritage lights to that point. I know that you were supporting that project, but it would complete that heritage set of lights on Fitzroy Street. Thank you, Madam Chair.
We can look at that too in capital budget time, right? Yeah, okay.
I have a question.
Okay, we're going to have one more question on this part, and then we'll move on to our new business. Yes, Councillor Twill.
Scott, on Pond Street, I know the mayor made reference to Ward 4. Two projects were certainly long overdue. With persistence, we got the projects done. Incurred in the cost on Pond Street, what allowances did you have to make for the district heating? They put in a whole new infrastructure as well. I made it, I know, I talked to Richard McEwen, the manager of Water and Sewer, and I think yourself as well, and I made it quite clear that the last thing we want to do is have all this construction done on Pond Street and then only to have, district heating come back later and then rip the street up. So I'm sure that you played a major role in talking with district heating to come in with all new infrastructure to ensure that we're not going to rip that street up again, or, for example, Pond Street, which was paved from Queen Street to University Avenue, or Queen Street to Spring Park Road, and to have that street ripped up again, because what's happened over the last 10 years is that they just seem to come in and just rip it up whenever they deem it necessary. So hopefully that reoccurrence won't happen. I mean, the street looks good. There's a sidewalk there now. It's safer for pedestrian traffic. Students from Colonel Gray, Queen Charlotte, residents that walk to Holy Redeemer Church and Jack Blanchard Hall, and that whole area is extremely busy. So can you give me an indication if, in fact, there are additional costs to accommodate the district heating?
No, there were no additional costs to accommodate district heating. They took care of all their costs for replacement, including backfilling and all that. So at the end of the day, there was no additional cost to the city. They hired their own contractor, all that stuff. So any of the overages that they would have seen, we don't see.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Twill. All right, into new business is the proposed Province House District Master Plan, and the mayor is looking for a bit of an update there. Scott, are you able to provide anything there?
Yes, I can. So you are correct. There is a public open house at the library next Wednesday. CADC is kind of the lead on the project, but we are in, because they were the ones that kind of spearheaded the project, as it's quite a large plan going on there. But I thought there was supposed to be a meeting request going out to all council to advise them, but if not, I'll make sure it gets done first thing in the morning. Someone will send it out to all the council. But that is the plan for an open house. It's a drop-in style. Folks can come in and see it and provide their feedback on it, which we'll take back, integrate it in the plan, and then bring it back to council to review and have additional say on it or accept the plan.
Thank you. Your worship, do you have questions?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to clarify, I believe the meeting will be held at the Charlottetown Library Learning Center,
That's correct.
correct? Starting at 6 o'clock?
I would have to confirm, but I believe it is 6 to 8.
Yeah. And for new councillors, this is very important to get out to see this presentation, because it's not just the Province House, it's the Confederation Centre, it's Queen Street, it's Sydney Street. It's not completely not the complete 500 lot, but that whole area around the Confederation Centre. No, not completely. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do we have an idea what the cost is to that project?
I don't have. I assume you're talking about the overall vision that plan that's been put together and what it would cost to do that work. No, because of the fact they never looked at any of the underground infrastructure. So really, the plan is right now is looking at what we would like as a vision for on top of the street, and then if it is accepted by council and we start to move down that road towards that, we will have to look into what the underground utilities are. I can see if they have a cost for the overall streetscape work that they're planning, but I don't think it's inclusive of any of the underground infrastructure that we would want to see happen at the time before before anyone does a lot of work in there and we have to go, again, rip it up. We want to do everything all at once while we're there.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you very much. So before we adjourn, I'll just do a little recap to remind us as a committee that we'll go back, we'll look at our bylaws, we'll be able to come back to our next committee, ask any questions or clarifications. If you have anything other than what's already been put on motion for our next committee, please email the manager and myself, give a week's notice or so they can come prepared to answer any questions that you may have. And as far as that, I'm going to ask for someone to put a motion forward that we can adjourn. Motion to adjourn, seconded by Councillor Twill. All those in favor? Thank you.
Chair, I just want to reiterate that I'm looking forward to the exercise of reevaluating the criteria for how neighborhood streets are rated and that whole process.
Thank you. Have a good evening.